In an intelligent study of the science of mind, we come to understand that all is love, yet all is law. Love rules through law. Love is the divine givingness. Law is the way. We should study the nature of reality with this in mind, and in this way we shall avoid two grave mistakes, either viewing life as made up only of mechanical laws, or viewing it as made up only of spontaneous actions irrespective of law and order. As we gain the broader viewpoint, we shall see that life must contain two fundamental characteristics. We shall see that there is an infinite spirit operating through an infinite and unchanging law. In this, cosmos, and not chaos, finds an eternal existence in reality. Love points the way, and law makes the way possible. You may have read this recently if you're reading along with us in the Science of Mind this year. This was Thursday's reading from our third chapter in the book from Ernest Holmes, our founder, whose birthday is tomorrow. Also the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living and the author of that Science of Mind textbook. And he is telling us that love points the way and the law makes the way possible. And this month actually, we're looking at what is the science of mind. That's our theme. And I don't know about you, but I've been asked that pretty often in my life in the last 20 years since I've been studying this. And it's not just a quick little answer, is it? There's a little more involved to it. We need to sit down and have a cup of coffee and talk about what is this teaching called the science of mind. So we're trying to spend 4 weeks and give you a good foundation for what that is. And today my talk is Recipe for Success. Recipe for Success. This science of mind is really a compilation of many of the best of the world's faith traditions. Ernest Holmes was an avid reader. He studied the world's faith traditions, and he was able to extrapolate from those the key teachings that each of them had and then put them into this compilation that we know as the Science of Mind textbook. And if you read and study this teaching, you will find that it really is a recipe for successful living. It's really a recipe for successful living. And again, we're in the third week of our studies this month, and we started first with the thing itself. And we then went to how it works. And today is all about what it does. What it does. And it, of course, being God, Spirit, Source, whatever we call that divine presence that lives and moves within each of us. Now, I've always been intrigued by this statement of Ernest, love points the way and law makes the way possible. And as I've reflected on it not only this week but over the years of what does this actually mean, I've begun to see it out picture in my life and see it work in my life that way. We say that God is love. Have you ever heard that? That's probably one of the first Bible verses you ever learned as a child. It was the first one I learned as a small child. And the Christmas pageant, you know, everybody gets up and says their Bible verse, and mine is God is love. It's like, I got that one. That's easy. And that translates right into the science of mind because we teach the same thing here. God is love. And this quote says, love points the way. Love points the way. And when we consider that God is in, through, and as all, in, through, and as us, it is infinite wisdom, intelligence, creativity, and love itself is, as Ernest says, is the self-givingness of God to and through its creation. Then we can begin to see that God is the source and it points the way, is igniting that divine spark of idea, of passion, of desire within us. That's the spark that is ignited within us. To try this, do that, what about this? That inquisitiveness of an idea that sparks us. And we are all sparked and stirred and excited and enthused by incredibly different things. Thank goodness, right? It'd be pretty boring if we were all interested in only one thing. But we're not. We're all interested in very different things, and we bring our own unique gifts and talents to those things that spark us. And being beings of choice, we get to choose which ones we're going to act on. We could have one idea presented to this entire group this morning, and it would not resonate with all of us, would it? There might be one or two that would actually take it and go do something with it. And that's the way life works through us, because we all have those filters that we talked about last week. We can choose more good or more bad. We can choose more love or more fear. We can choose more abundance or more lack. We have that gift and freedom of choice, don't we? But you may be asking yourself, why would I choose bad, lack, or fear? Why indeed? That is the riddle that each of us gets to solve for ourselves, isn't it? We can all judge each other and say, oh, I know what your problem is. If you just fix this, then I know your life would be great, right? But that doesn't mean anything, does it? It doesn't mean anything until it comes from within us, and we can solve that riddle of why am I not calling forth more abundance, more love, more light, more peace, more happiness into my life. Only we can solve that riddle within ourselves. You know, perhaps it's a thought that's still running in the background someplace, like a virus in a computer that we're not really aware of that's there. Perhaps it's that we don't believe in the infinite possibilities available to us and that we can choose. Perhaps we don't believe that we can have a different experience from that which we're in right now. Anybody remember going through the recession? Didn't it seem like it was never going to end? That we were going to be stuck there forever? We were stuck in fear. It was very hard to see the end of that. But here we are. Most of us have made it. Beginning to recover, if not recovered. But in the moment of that, we're kind of immersed in it, aren't we? We're immersed in that fear. We're stuck in it. But we can use that power of our imagination to create those new avenues and see the brighter future. The second part of the quote is that law makes the way possible. Law makes the way possible. We're told that we live in an orderly universe, and we see it all around us, don't we? We have the seasons that orderly change. We have the day and the night, and the moon does its cycle. We can find out what time the sun's going to rise tomorrow, next week, or next year. You can look it up. I mean, it's so predictable, so orderly. We can predict the weather. We live in an orderly universe. We live in an orderly universe. It's all designed to function orderly in a law-abiding way. Thank goodness, right? Imagine if it was all chaotic. We wouldn't know how to function within that. In the science of mind and the Bible, both, we have this wonderful saying, it is done unto us as we believe. Have we heard that? Yeah, we've heard that. Or scientifically, you may know it as the law of cause and effect. We're always at the effect of our choices, aren't we? We're always at the effect of our choices. And we can see this instantaneously in conversation sometimes, can't we? Have you ever said anything you wish you hadn't said? Oh yeah, that happens, doesn't it? And sometimes you say something with the best of intentions, but the person receiving it filters that through maybe a different belief system or some sort of a different interpretation, and conflict results. It's right there, right there, reflected right back to you, isn't it? That wasn't what I meant. You took it the wrong way. And then that starts, doesn't it? But we can end up in conflict. We can end up in conflict from that encounter. However, conflict is not all bad, is it? Conflict is not all bad. It can be a source of personal growth. It can be a source of personal growth. I know a lot of us follow the Abraham teaching, Esther Hicks, familiar with that? And she says in the creative process that we need contrast. Have you ever heard her say that? That we need the contrast to know what we do want and what we don't want. We have to have the contrast of the two. How do you know that you don't like lima beans if you've never had them? Right? Contrast actually means strikingly different. Yin and yang. black and white. Strikingly different. It can be our different opinions, can it? They can be strikingly different, creating that conflict. The challenge with conflict, though, starts when we get stuck in it, doesn't it? When we get stuck in it. And we're not willing to grow through it. We're not willing to have the conversations. We're not willing to have the exploration. We're not willing to recognize that God's in this too. God is all there is. God's in me. God's in you. God's in all of it. And when we can step into that perspective in any conflict and go, okay, this is an opportunity for growth. This is an opportunity to grow through this time. I love the quote, no mud, no lotus. Have you ever heard that? No mud, no lotus. It's kind of a Buddhist Eastern tradition quote. But I love that because we see the beautiful lotus blossom floating on top of the pond. But in the bottom of the pond is just mud, isn't it? But that's what it needs to produce and to have the nutrients and so forth that it needs to be able to come forth and blossom. No mud, no lotus. Sometimes we have to walk through the mud of the conflict in order to grow and blossom more fully into our own bloom. Another way to think of the idea of love and law is a game. Now, I know it's almost Super Bowl time, isn't it? I think the last 2 games are today. Anybody going to watch those? Yeah, last 2 games. And football is a really good analogy for this. Love is the game itself. Law is the rules that we play by to play successfully. If you consistently choose to put 12 players on the field, you're not playing by the rules, right? Aren't there 11 men on the team? Yes? Okay. Forgot to ask you that before I left this morning, just to make sure. But if you consistently put 12 people out there, what happens? The referee blows the whistle, throws a flag, and you get a penalty. You're not playing by the rules. If you consistently choose to have your team tackle the other team by grabbing their face masks and dragging them to the ground, that's another penalty. You can't do that, right? The referee's going to continue to throw the flag and penalize you with additional yardage, preventing you probably from winning the game. You're not playing by the rules, are you? You're not playing by the rules. Now, these referees, they don't play any favorites, do they? They don't play any favorites. There's no respecters of persons. And I know, unless they're throwing a flag against your team, in which case they're blind, right? Got it. But this idea of no respecters of persons applies to universal laws and rules. Thank goodness. If you're the Pope or you're an atheist, it doesn't matter. We all play by the same rules. We all use the same law. It has nothing to do with that. So what does it, source, God, what does it do? That is the chapter title, what it does. In simple terms, it responds to our thinking. It responds to our thinking. It responds through us. It creates or manifests in response to our thinking. That's what it does, in very simple terms. Now, I know a lot of you resonated with the cookie press last week. I got a lot of feedback on that as far as a metaphor for the creative process. And it still works for this idea of what it does, because the disk has the form through which the universal substance flows. We're the disk, we create the form. Another example of that is Jell-O. And I've used this before. Love the Jell-O idea because Jell-O is such an interesting product if you think about it. It starts as powder. Then we add hot water and it transforms to liquid. Then we add either ice or cold water and let it set and it becomes gel. So it takes 3 different forms, doesn't it? It takes 3 different forms. But it will take the final form as the gel of either the bowl or the parfait, or one of these, remember those? One of those metal tins. What's up there? A fish, a lobster, pineapple, a heart. It can take any of those forms, can't it? Because the gel, the liquid, turns into a gel that takes the form of that, the mold. And that's what we teach here, that we create the mold into which spirit flows into form. We hold that mold. So what is the mold that you have created for your intention that you set the first of the first of this month, when we set our intentions for the year? What is the mold that you've created for your relationship to attract love into your life? What is the mold that you have set and established for yourself for attracting financial good into your life? Happiness, health. What is the mold? And what is your thinking today around that mold? Is it still stable in expectation of that divine flow? What is the tendency of your thinking around that? Is it wobbly? Is it stable? Is it consistent? Are you practicing every day? Are you practicing every day? I think we have a wonderful opportunity, if you're ready to tackle this idea of the tendency of your thinking. If you're ready to tackle that, we have a great opportunity right now in our world to observe our thoughts, because that's one of the hard things to do, isn't it? To really know what we're thinking. You know, sometimes we get jolted, or if we're really concentrating on something, we might know it. But if we figure we've got 24 hours in the day, and what did we come up with? 67 bajillion, whatever that number is, thoughts we did in one of our studies. But do you know what those are? It's a lot of thinking, a lot of thoughts that we have all day long. And one way to know what our thinking is to watch the news. To watch the news. Now, I know a lot of us have made a conscious choice not to watch TV, much less the news, right? Don't want that stuff in my life. And I get that. I get that. And yet I know there's opportunity in watching it, particularly if it charges us, that we can see our response to what's being said, either in the headlines, watching a newscast itself, internet news, whatever it might be, or even a conversation where someone's talking about current events. Watching our thinking, watching our reactions to that will give us a clue as to how we have a tendency of our thinking. Are we inquisitive? Wow, that's an interesting perspective. I would like to understand more about that. Right now I'm not agreeing with it, but I'd like to understand how others can think that way, broadening our perspective of understanding, remaining a choice, of course, to take it or leave it, right? But at least recognizing our thoughts about it. Recognizing our thoughts about it. Where does your thinking go? Is it going into resistance? Is it going into blame? Is it going into righteousness? I'm right, they're wrong, I'm not even going to listen to that. These are all things that can show us the tendency of our thinking. And I said, this is one to tackle. I mean, if you're up for it, try it. See what happens for you. But imagine if we could all do this and watch the news and bless the stories and the people and say our prayers around that. What impact we could begin to have on universal consciousness, the consciousness of the whole, and creating a world that works for all. There's power in that prayer. There's power in that prayer. And it's a little bit like the forgiveness work that we talk about, where once it's safe for the other person or the other thing to walk through the hallways of our minds, we have forgiven. And once we can bless the experience, we're healed. Once we can bless the experience, then we're healed. We're healed. So what is the recipe for success? What is the recipe for success? Ernest is pretty clear. It's affirmative prayer. It's our affirmative prayer treatment. This chapter is the first time that he mentions it in the Science of Mind. So the first 2 chapters he didn't mention affirmative prayer treatment. Not until this 3rd chapter does he begin to mention it and begin to talk about what it is. He says a treatment is a statement in the law embodying the concrete idea of our desires and accompanied by an unqualified faith that the law works for us as we work with it. It works for us as we work with it. He says we should waste no more time looking for the secret of success or the key to happiness. Already the door is open and anyone can enter. Anyone can enter. We have these wonderful affirmative prayer treatment flyers back on the back table, actually out in the front. In it, it breaks down the 5 steps of an affirmative prayer, telling you what each one is. It gives you an example of an affirmative prayer, and then it gives you a space to write your own. So it's a handy-dandy little flyer that you can take with you if you would like to practice this thing called affirmative prayer treatment. You heard Lori do one this morning for us in her opening prayer. There's also the Science of Mind teaching symbol on the back of it that breaks down the creative process that we teach here as well. These are available to you in the back if you have an interest this morning. So Holmes teaches us that a trained thought is more powerful than an untrained thought. And just like practicing football, we learn the rules, we go to practice, we work our skills, we build our strength. It's true of the game of life too, isn't it? None of us came in with instruction booklets that told us how to do life. We don't have them now. We've all learned in the what they call it, the hard knocks, school of hard knocks, to get to where we are now. We've learned through our experiences, haven't we? And we can change the current conditions in our life if there are conditions we're experiencing that are not at the magnificence level that we would like it to be at. We can change those through practice. Through practice. Training our minds how to think. That's what Science of Mind says. It says we don't teach you what to think, we teach you how to think. It's like the creative thinking classes that we all probably took in school. Teaching us how to think, how to be more analytical, how to analyze, and to take the principles and improve them into our own lives. So let's do some of that. Let's look at practicing the presence this week and our practicing the principles. The first one is to learn the rules and practice, and that's what we were just saying. As in athletics, we train in life. Your mind, training our mind how to think, and practicing every day. You know, meditation, I hear people so many times say, oh, it's so hard, I can't do it, I can't think, I've got so much chatter in my mind that I'm distracted all the time. And it really just takes practice. For my long-term meditators, you know, it takes practice to move us beyond that chatter, to get our minds to recognize a time of quietude, a time of settling our bodies, a time of quieting our minds and connecting in spirit. So just stay with it. Just stay with it. We've got classes, books, study groups, and a lot of different ways to learn and practice universal truths. Number 2, how does treatment work? How does treatment even work? Well, first we imagine the form, or that mold that we were talking about. We imagine what that is. So we're looking at the other side of that which we're treating for. What is this outcome that I seek? What is the financial good? What is the relationship? What is the career? What is the what does it mean to me to be happy? I just want to be happy. What does that mean? If I were happy, what would that look like? How would I feel? So we go to that form or that mold, and then we live from that acceptance. We live from that acceptance. If I was in the relationship, if I had the job, if I had the bank account, if I was happy, if I was healthy, how would I feel right now? And we live from that place. We live from that place. And number 3, have faith. Is a very important component of our spiritual life, isn't it? Faith is trust. It's developing our beliefs. It's knowing God is our source. Spirit is all that there is, and it lives within each of us. Having faith. And we have to build that, like we have to build any of our muscles. Our faith and our power to form the mold, that we have the ability and the choice of building that mold that we want to experience in our life. And that we have the gift to be able to direct the law. to direct the law of our lives. And that we have this ability to pray and treat. It's not difficult. It's not difficult. And finally, to understand that Spirit can work through us only as much or as little as we allowed. Only as much or as little as we allow. Affirmative prayer. 5 simple steps. Very powerful. Repeatable, scientific. Very, very, very powerful tool that we have. Again, I invite you to pray with one of our practitioners. Leave a written prayer request. Go online and leave a request there. If you need help on crafting prayers or speaking them, talk to the practitioners, talk to me. We're here for you. This is what we teach. So come and talk with us. It's very powerful practice. And the neat thing about it is it's portable. You don't need to carry anything around with you. It's portable. It's right here. It's right here. We can pray any time. That was Jesus saying, pray without ceasing. We live from a place of prayerfulness, of that divine connection always. So the thing itself is God. We said God is relationship. The way it works is through you and through me. It works through us as we choose. And what it does is it responds to our thinking. It responds to our thinking. And this is practicing the presence of Spirit, to learn to actively live this teaching as a demonstration of our lives each and every day. So let's practice right now as we speak in affirmative prayer this morning. Moving into this time of prayerfulness, we recognize that there is only one power, one presence, one universal life, and that is the life of God. It is the life of the divine. It is Spirit, source, essence. It's the thing itself, as Ernest said. It is infinite intelligence and wisdom. It is love, joy, harmony. It is this thing we call life. And all of it is right here now present, in, through, and as this room, in, through, and as me, and in, through, and as each and every one of us in this room and within the sound of my voice. It is that wisdom that is within us. It is that intelligence that lives within us. It is the love and the spark of desire that lives within each of us. So from this place of harmony, this place of unity, this place of acknowledging who and what we are as manifestations of the divine, I speak my word for us this day, for each of us. Knowing, claiming, and accepting the divine life of Spirit that flows through us into the mold of our minds, whatever that desire may be, that individualized and unique expression of that, whatever we are seeking to create more of, be it peace, love, joy, harmony, whatever it might be that we are seeking an experience of in our lives. That mold that we hold in our minds right now, that we bring into our own awareness and our own consciousness. We allow Spirit to fill it now in this moment, accepting it, receiving it, being that thing that we have spoken our prayer for, that we desire. And how grateful I am for knowing this creative process, knowing that prayer works, and for the receipt of each and every idea that just came forward and was lifted into this prayer. For I know, claim, and accept its manifestation in this moment. As I release this into the activity of mind, into the action of law, knowing that love is all that there is, and the law makes the way possible. I release it, I let it be, and we affirm it together by saying, and so it is.